it was going to take some elbow grease. I mean, we've probably had it down 5-6 weeks finishing our remodel, but it looks amazing. So by willing to put in that extra work and that cash up front, I've got my mortgage lower because my purchase price is lower.
Right.
So even at an 8.5% interest rate, I'm still able to cash flow. And I'm still planning on refinancing into conventional loans eventually. But right now, I now own those properties and I do cost segregations on them. So it's kind of a win-win in my opinion.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yonah Weiss. As always, here on this beautiful day, excited to have yet another short-term rental aficionado on the show. Megan Winterberg is here with us, and I'm just really, really eager to dive into your story, which is so amazing. I mean, just we were talking a little bit before the show, but I mean, it's just awesome to hear how people have really transitioned out of corporate America, living the life they want to live, and the dreams they want to make a reality. So Megan, without further ado, I'd love for you to give a little bit of a background to our listeners who don't know who you are. First of all, how are you doing today?
Good. It's beautiful here. Sunny California. So no regrets.
Well, good for you. Besides for the high taxes, there's probably not much to complain about.
One of the reasons I don't own here.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you transition? I just jump right in because I learned recently you partnered up with the mortgage shop. So take a step back. Okay. Megan is a short-term rental investor. She owns short-term rentals. That's what they're called in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, like many other people, and just in the past few years have transitioned from corporate America to doing this full-time. And now also being part of the mortgage shop, which is a short-term rental focused lending mortgage, lender. And how did you do all this? Just give me the long and short of it.
Oh man, Cliff Notes version. So we started everything literally 2 years ago. So I've been in corporate America for 11 years. My husband and I had been saving income. We've actually been living on just my salary for 6 years straight. We decided about 6 years ago when I was 9 months pregnant with our first child, okay, we make decent income. Where's it going? Oh, our backyard remodel or whatnot. So we just decided, okay, we're just going to force his income to get saved every month and we'll live off of mine. And now we still do.
Wow.
Sold our house in 2017. So no more California taxes. Found a Craigslist rental and moved in off of that little sucker, but under market rent, and just stayed there, kept saving, put it in stocks. We didn't know any different. And then 2020 came, COVID was full bore. And literally one day I was like, we talk about real estate. Let's just start buying it. And he's like, you know what? I agree. We don't like stocks. It's not getting us where we want to be. We knew we wanted out of our jobs. We weren't that happy in them. So we said, okay, let's do it. Read all the books, did the bigger pockets thing, and just went for it. Thought short-term rentals were actually a terrible idea. It was not something I ever thought that we would do. We were going for multifamily, crystal clear criteria, picked Tennessee as our state, started picking our team, and Avery, Carl, and I had a one-on-one conversation. So I was finding different brokers. This is when Avery still did have one-on-one conversations. I think both of our children were screaming in the background. And that day I told my husband, hey, let's switch to short-term rentals. I know we've been analyzing multifamily for 6 months. And so we made the transition. He agreed. Wow. We wanted cash flow, started offering a week later, bought two in. We closed on our first one after 100 offers. January of 2021, bought two that year, bought four in 2022, one more in 2023. So we were about $7.5 million worth of real estate in 2 years.
Wow.
All my husband and I.
That's incredible. And it's amazing how Avery has that effect on people. And she has been able to do that on so many people. But for the good. I mean, obviously there are no regrets. Having $7 million in real estate holdings is probably producing a pretty nice amount of cash flow, I would assume.
Yeah, We actually haven't touched 1 cent of it. So a little over a year ago, I quit my job. That wasn't the plan yet by any means. We have not hit our cash flow goals, but I was working on my lending license on the side. One local lender in California said, why don't you get your lending license? I feel like you'd really like it. I was a business major, big on operations numbers. And so I was like, okay, why not? So I was only getting it for selfish reasons. And then I literally made a joke to Brenna Carls, founder of the mortgage shop. She did my loans prior when she was at a different company, and she recruited me, knew nothing about lending. And I said, you know what, I think I can do this. And I made the jump, gave a 3-week notice. And then only reason we felt we could do that, my husband and I, is because we knew we could fall back on the cabins if we had to. Still have yet to touch that cash flow, and jumped into the mortgage shop. And then I was their number 1 loan officer last year. So turns out I got a knack for it.
Congratulations. Good for you.
Thank you. It's been fun. And I've learned a ton along the way, selfishly too, helping other clients, but helping myself. I have so many creative loan options. But yes, the cabins, to answer your question, they cash flow well. We've touched none of it. It just rolls into more cabins and more rehabs, because we like to rehab all of our cabins remotely.
Okay. So that was going to be my next question. You mentioned you're not, touching into the cash flow. Obviously, you're just reinvesting that back into the business, into buying more properties or making the properties better.
Yes. So we only buy, I call them ugly ducklings. I don't like turnkey. It's good for the right investor.
Mm-hmm.
I want the meat on the bone. So meaning my husband and I, every single property, 5 out of 7 were ugly ducklings where we've done full rehabs, and we're in California. So we've been doing this fully remotely. I've been managing the rehabs, the operations. I do the daily management. We just finally went to Tennessee for the first time, I think 5 months ago. So we finally saw our properties. They lived up to the expectations. About to finish completing this other rehab right now. And so basically cash flow goes into rehab. That cabin pays off that rehab next year, and all those profits just go into the next cabin, the next rehab. We don't plan on touching a single set till we get to our cash flow goals.
Wow. And do you mind sharing that? Is that something you can disclose what your cash flow goals are? Because it seems like having that much, property, and, I know what, 7 short-term rentals can make. That seems like a lot of cash flow.
It does. So it's probably going to gross around 800,000, potentially more this year. I mean, we have one that won't be going live till mid-year, but if they were all full calendar years,
mm-hmm.
Our actual cash flow goal. So I've got it right in front of me. I can see it. I look at it every day. So it's 65,000 a month. That is not to live off of. We are not fancy people. We have, 2000 Honda that my husband drives to work. Everything's paid off. Our clothes are probably 15 years old. But I read a book, Millionaire Fastlane, and it was the best way I found to determine your cash flow goals. It just clicked in, and that would give us 3 buckets, 1 to design your ideal life. So I just wrote everything out. Yeah, if my kids were in private school, which they're not, and I wanted a house cleaner all the time, and all right, there's bucket 1. I could live off 20,000, cover a mortgage, vacations. Bucket 2, another 20,000 to keep buying more cabins or whatever we buy. And then bucket 3, conservative other investments. My husband wants it to be 100,000. I'm like, let's just get to 65 first, and then we can talk.
I mean, they're amazing goals. And what's fascinating is how just a few rental properties can actually get you there.
Yeah.
In a matter of a few years. And not to say that everyone can do this and anyone can do this, because this is something that obviously takes a certain personality to do. Like I was joking with you before, it's just, I've been meaning to buy a short-term rental for a while, but I just dread having to deal with actual, issues that come up. And even though you can automate probably 90% of it or more, it's that 10% that I just don't even want to deal with. So,
I dread it too. That's why I told my husband it was a terrible idea. And then we kept buying them and I kept managing them. My husband's job can't, nor is he an organized person. So it's probably best that I do. He's our visionary and I'm the integrator. He sees every remodel. He's squeezed out extra sleeping rooms. And then I say, thank you, go find the next cabin. I'll make it happen now. So yeah, I dreaded it too. I still have my moments when there's that annoying guest. Luckily, they're there 3 days. And I just get reminded that, you know what, you can be angry for 2 more minutes. They're paying you $3,000. I'm like, you're right. Okay, moving on to the next.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think it is. And I think that's the best way to handle it, and just kind of reframing it and understanding it's a business, and it's a matter of wanting to run that business and getting the benefits over the downsides that come along with it.
Well, and we probably won't stay active forever. I mean, our goal is to get we're going to eventually branch out once we hit the goal we want with our short terms. But then also, I always see us owning. I've been asked this a lot, like, are you going to do the self-management? I'm like, I refuse to do a property manager for short-term rentals. They take too much of a profit and I don't feel it's needed. But you better believe I'm working on building my virtual assistant team and other teams where I can step away, because I like doing lending. I like doing other things in real estate, but then still have my hands in it enough.
Right.
I like doing the rehabs. I think they're fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, what's amazing to me is you were able to do the rehabs remotely. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of having the right contractors, having the right people on the ground.
Blood, faith, and tears, a little bit of all of it, I guess you could say. So our first one, we didn't really have an intention of buying it remotely. And it was during COVID. So we're like, yeah, we're getting this. Oh, we're closing. We don't want to go on an airplane right now. Okay. So it kind of forced us to, let me start interviewing contractors, learning along the way. Because that one, I think, needed 30 grand of just not even cosmetic work, just to fix the deck. And I don't know how that people were renting it ahead of time. And so, having a strong background in operations, I was director of operations for almost 11 years and just used those skills, lots of people skills, bartender and server for 10 years before that. So I've encountered many personalities and created systems, not really burned along the way, vetted a ton of people. Most people would even call me back because they didn't need the business, and then just really honed in our team. So whatever remodel number we're on right now, this has been the smoothest. We have a designer. I'm not picking pieces, but basically they know what we want now. So when they go in and say, all right, Megan's getting another cabin. Here's our weeks. I've got an Excel sheet timeline. They get paid appropriately, and I pay well and I pay early.
That's important, because that's going to get you obviously good repeat business from those people that are good, and you'll retain the talent and they'll tell you what they think.
And don't micromanage. I did that with my designer on our second property. We had to furnish a 3,800 square foot cabin. Do not recommend that. If you're able to buy furnished, take what you can get. And I was like, I don't know if I want to pay this. Maybe I can pick it out room by room. And then I was asking her to invoice line by line item of every room. And she was very candid with me, which really established our relationship. Like, you hired me, you need to trust me, we'll get through it. And it's the most talked about cabin that we have, the Duke. People are obsessed. And now she's gone back and she does everything for me. I can't wait to see our newest one.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So I want to transition. You're talking about the mortgage shop. You want to become a lender just, kind of on your own and figure it out just to help yourself. And what do you mean by that, by helping yourself? And what have you learned along the way?
Honestly, so I always felt like I was talking to a black wall. I mean, Brenna was fantastic. Past lenders are fantastic, but I'm like, they tell you an interest rate. And as a buyer, like, okay, so I just say yes, lock it in. I don't know what you're looking at on the screen. I don't know what my options are. You don't know what you don't know. So I really got my lending license to be like, okay, how creative can I be? What do I really need to put down? What does paying an extra 10 grand in my mortgage equate to monthly payments? And that's just kind of the overall, not even diving into the asset-based loans, debt service coverage ratio. I have 3 of those now. So, and I've even have a HE loan. So there's just so many other tools that it's allowed me to get creative. I mean, I have a whole Excel sheet for our personal portfolio and know which loans I'm going to keep, which ones I'm going to refinance, how we can scale to our cash flow goal, and also DTI with my own tax returns. Make sure they were done a certain way, and really knowing what I need our DTI to be, what we need to do going forward to really help it. So lots of selfish reasons. And then it's turned out into just helping other people. I like to help them scale their portfolios. When they tell me they hate their job, I say, let's talk.
And that's an amazing opportunity that you have. Similar to what Avery did for you and what Brenna did for you, you can do for others. And that's just kind of paying it forward.
I mean, my husband's still stuck in his job, not forever. It's been great stability to have. We don't need it, but we want that because we're trying to grow as quickly as possible. So anyway, but I mean, once you see the other side of it, it was a mindset shift. I didn't realize my life could be this way. And I can't imagine. I'm even starting a local meetup. It's called Go Get Hers, with a local realtor who understands our vision. And I'm like, can we just help other women who are not happy in their lives get cash flow? So
Good for
Yeah,
you.
any way I can pay it forward.
Good for you. So, $1 million question for you, and this is something I get all the time. Since you're now a lender, I get to ask you this question. Why is it that lenders don't know how to add back depreciation on when looking at your debt to income ratio?
The good
And
ones do.
the good ones do. Okay. So is it
Yes.
just a matter of ignorance and incompetence, or is there like some hidden reason that lenders don't do that?
I would say it's a lack of knowledge and understanding of what you can or can't do. So, and that's what I found one of the largest tools of tax returns, because I've done cost segregations 2 years, 4 properties now, and being able to still utilize the depreciation adding back in to still help our debt to income has been dramatic. But there's been many clients who have come to me with, I was only able to get pre-approved for 300,000. This is what's going on. I'm like, let me see what you got going on. And yeah, so it's really just, if it's not their specialty, I live and breathe rentals and investment properties. So I'm in those tax returns. But if someone's focusing on primary residence W-2 wages all the time, and then this comes along, they just don't know. And they probably shouldn't be the broker for that specific loan.
That's what I've found as well. And unfortunately, it's come up with friends of mine who have tried to buy a primary home, and the mortgage broker, the lender, is saying, sorry, it doesn't matter that you make, $5 million a year. It's not on your W-2 or whatever. And, your depreciation losses are showing that you're only making, $50,000 a year. So it doesn't make any sense to me, but it's good to hear that it's really just a lack of understanding and knowledge from the part of lenders.
I have a client coming back to me right now for a similar reason. He went with his bank because they did his primary. They're offering him a killer rate that only banks can offer. And I warned him, are you sure they can close your loan? But I know they say they can. And he reached out yesterday. And so we're transitioning over. So it just shows.
Tell me about these asset-based loans, because this is something a lot of people don't even know exist and know that you can do, especially for short-term rentals.
Oh, yeah. I was mind blown. It's almost a dangerous but amazing opportunity. Like any tool, you use it correctly, use it in moderation. So debt service coverage ratio, asset-based loans. So let's say you still have capital, but your debt to income ratio won't allow for any other properties.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a great tool. They have larger down payments, higher interest rates. But if you're buying the right kind of property, they could still work for you. And I'll give you a real life example. So my goal for cash flow and returns is 17 to 18% per property, not counting the rehab. I'm willing to forgo the return the first year, have the rehab paid off, and then just cash flow from there. I can do that on a debt service coverage ratio loan. I could not do that if I was buying turnkey, though.
Interesting. So can you break that down, why that might be and what the difference is? Because it would seem to me, if you're paying a higher down payment and a higher interest rate, then that would kind of reduce your cash flow in a lot of ways.
It does for some. So when I run the numbers for some clients, they just don't make sense at all. I really dive in deep to find the right ugly duckling. And so that's where it's got enough meat on the bone where we see opportunity. I mean, the first cabin we bought was on the market 1 year exactly. So when they accepted our offer, for one, we had a heart attack because it was 50 grand under ask and they just accepted it. So we're like, okay, what's wrong with this property if it's been sitting here selling? And nothing. It was terrible looking. They loved John Wayne. It's called True Grit. There were Chotskys everywhere. And so we've kept a little bit. It's called True Grit still, and same with our current one. It was never a rental. It was going to take some elbow grease. I mean, we've probably had it down 5-6 weeks finishing our remodel, but it looks amazing. So by willing to put in that extra work and that cash up front, I've got my mortgage lower because my purchase price is lower.
Right.
So even at an 8.5% interest rate, I'm still able to cash flow. And I'm still planning on refinancing into conventional loans eventually. But right now, I now own those properties and I do cost segregations on them. So it's kind of a win-win in my opinion.
I think it's all about the business plan. And just like you said, understanding the whole kind of the holistic approach. And when you're dealing with properties that, like you said, the ugly ducklings, where they do need a lot more work than the regular, I think it's much less likely for people who are out of state or looking for cash flow are not really willing to do the work, to get into that rehab, these heavy rehabs. It's scary.
I know. I hear that quite a bit. There's many clients from all over the country and they're like, oh, I want turnkey. And I'm like, you can do whatever you want. But I, Megan, am not just your loan officer. If it's a lending client and say, I'm just going to talk to you as an investor and choose your path. But it's possible because I've done it. And I've done it from California to Tennessee. So I live and breathe it. It's not always easy, but it's possible. And it's very rewarding doing it that way. So yeah, I'd say it's your business plan and your goals for sure.
So you've left the 9-to-5, you left your corporate job and you're doing this, managing the rentals remotely and managing the rehabs remotely and, doing the lending remotely, obviously, everything you're doing from home, I assume. And I mean, how has that changed your daily lifestyle with your kids and your family?
It's been amazing. I worked from home occasionally at my W-2 and never liked it. I think because it was great company, but it just wasn't the right fit. There was still Big Brother. There wasn't that freedom of trust. And now I don't have any fluff. There's no politics. I work to make money. I don't go to any other water cooler conversations. And I've always gotten up at 5 a.m. or earlier because for one, that's the only time I'm alone with my children are still sleeping. So I can get stuff done without being distracted. And now I can. I usually crush out 2.5 hours of work before my kids are up. I've addressed all my East Coast lending clients and my cabins are East Coast time. And now for the first time since my children were born 6 years ago, I've take them to school and pick them up. I am not a stay-at-home mom. No offense to anyone who is, but it's not for me. I love my children, just to not be with them all the time. So that's not what I was meant to do in this life. But being able to actually drop my kids off has been one of the most rewarding things. And then I can go spend time with my husband on his day off, walk our new puppy, or start building another business like we are with our new meetup we're doing.
Oh, very cool. So there's so much opportunity out there. It's really, it sounds like, I mean, I've heard like these terms like thrown out, kind of sprinkled throughout the conversation that I've picked up from a lot of different books and a lot of different education out there. It's kind of like nuanced language that you're in tune with. And it sounds like you've done a lot of reading on this subject of entrepreneurship and business. And that's just amazing.
Yeah. When I go all in, I do. I have my squirrel moments. It's hard not to. I was looking at a property local. My husband's like, what do we do with this commercial thing over here? This isn't our current goal. I'm like, yeah, that's right. It just was shiny and pretty. I saw an opportunity. But yes, I literally just dove in. So if I knew that's what I wanted to do, well, I thought it was multifamily. I think I read 4 or 5 books with bigger pockets than others, crammed the podcast. And then once I did short-term rentals, all right, cram. Now stop cramming. And then I immediately stopped reading and listening to anything. I said, now let's just go.
I think that's the biggest thing for a lot of people to get over that analysis paralysis, reading, educating. And then how do you do that? Like, what would you say is the biggest tip for someone out there who's in that similar situation where like, okay, I think I'm ready, but I don't know if I'm ready. Like, what do I do? How do you do it? How do you just make that step?
It's not easy. I tell them to do it anyways, because you're not going to be ready. Easier said than done, but no way were we ready when we did our first offer. Well, our first 100 offers, but then when the one was actually accepted, we're like, oh gosh, here we go. Okay, I guess we're doing it. But yeah, I could have analyzed another 50 properties and spent more time on AirDNA, and I had probably already spent enough trying to understand the market. It's more just, do you have a goal strong enough to where you will take action? Because if you don't know where you're going to end up, then you're never going to. So I always try to tell clients, put yourself like, where do you want to be in 5 years or 3 years? We know we're desperately wanting to get my husband out of his job. After 16 years, his days off are Monday, Tuesday. He never sees our children. His work hours are rough. And so that is so hard. See it all the time right there in front of me. Yeah, we're going to buy it. We have capital. If we get more capital, all right, buy another cabin. Boom, let's go. And once you do the first one, then it gets so much easier.
That's awesome. And it's so true. It's just getting out there. I love how you spun it, which is knowing your goal and having a strong enough goal will help you to take that action. And no one is ever ready to do their first deal.
No. And I had someone last night at a meetup tell me, really hoping to get that home run. And I'm like, just get the darn base hit. Because our first one was a base hit that beyond turned into a home run. Those cash flow goals blew us away. So I'm like, just start with something. It could turn into a lot better than you think. And the knowledge that you learn along the way, it just helps so much.
Right. The knowledge from the experience. That's just
Mm-hmm.
doing it more than anything else. Awesome, Megan. I want to transition now what we call the final four. These are four questions I ask all my guests. First question for you. What is the worst job that you ever had?
I had to think on this for a sec because I actually liked most of my jobs. I was a server and bartender for over 5 companies. I'm like, no, I liked all of them. But what stood out to me was I took a brief stint at a bank because I'm like, you know what? I'm a business major. I am going to dive in here and I'm going to conquer this bank. And I got in, and no offense to people in the banking world, but for one, I realized it's very slow. It's too quiet. I need my fast pace. I want to talk to people, and there's no room for growth. When you're serving tables, you can hustle to make more cash flow. Bank, I'm going to get paid no matter what. So I politely quit after 60 days and went back to bartending until I figured out what I was going to do with my life with my college degree.
That's pretty cool. You're a bartender.
I make a good drink. Yeah, it's a good time. I not very often because it takes effort. And we host all the time barbecues and people want fancy drinks. And I say, I'll open a beer for you. Here you go. So maybe once a month, I'll mix it up, make a mean old fashioned.
Okay. Well, good to hear. Good to know that. Maybe for the meetups, I'll do something special. Second question. What's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift? And I'm sure there's been more than one.
There have, but one that I think is very easy to follow is Cash Flow Quadrant. So the follow-up book to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Almost everyone has read it. If you haven't, you should. It gives you a decent paradigm shift. But for me, Cash Flow Quadrant was mind-blowing because of his diagram. Employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. Are you an E or an S? Or a B and an I? So the moment I read that and understood that, and I was still an E at the time in corporate America, said, we need to get to the right of the quadrant. And my husband, who's not much of a reader either, read it. And we're like, yes, it was so clear to us. So we know our goals to be B, and I'm an S now in lending. I'm technically self-employed, but my own lending goals with the mortgage shop and growing are to get me to that B and I too. So I have that in our goal. So easy read. I could list a bunch more, but that one is a great paradigm shift for the people who are stuck in that ES mindset.
Yeah. And many people are, and it's such a great book and a great follow-up to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I'll make sure to put that in the show notes for anyone who hasn't yet checked out the Cash Flow Quadrant. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I write this down every year on goals, and I have yet to do it. And it's 2. One's to relearn the piano. We got a free baby grand piano, and it's about 30 feet from me. It's not tunable. It's old. It's beat up, which is perfect for a 3-year-old. But I used to play the piano and I used to read music, and I haven't done that in a long time. So I said, I need to block out time in my calendar, and then to be fluent in Spanish. I took 4 years in high school. Actually, serving tables helped too, talking to the cooks, and continue that. But just dropped off. And I want to be able to go to Cabo, go to Europe, and just spend a lot of time. I really want to go to Spain, but Cabo's a little bit more affordable for me and
closer
and much closer. Yeah. Don't have to deal too much on the airplane, and just have fun and challenge myself to be fluent in a second language.
Good for you. And both of those things, surprisingly, are 2 of the most common answers we always get on the show is to learn a new language or to learn a musical instrument, which is it's extremely fascinating to me. And I always kind of ponder about why that is, but I would say I'm not so surprised. And yet another person said that.
Honestly, once you start playing that recorder in 4th grade, whether you go down the band route or not, and I played my mom's clarinet for 3 years, and I was in high school and I thought I was too cool. So I stopped. But I also played handbells at my church, and people make fun of me all the time. I'm like, I don't care. Handbells was awesome. I read music and I rocked those freaking handbells. And I taught myself the bass guitar. Like once you learn some confidence and understand how to read music, it's rewarding. It so is, especially for a non-creative person.
It also opens up a whole side of you that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Not everyone has the rhythm, and not everyone has that a little bit of talent to do that. But if you do, that's great. So third question we asked, fourth and final question, what does success mean to you? Honestly,
it's freedom. So it's being able to do what I want with who and when. It's not materialistic. I am, for the most part, fairly anti-materialistic. I have my couple vices, as do many. But when I see people with hair, nails, Tesla, no offense for anyone who has a Tesla out there, a lot of times I see people with things and I feel yeah, you may have it, but it doesn't even mean you own it. How much are you spending to make these things happen? Are you leasing these cars just to portray a lifestyle? I'd rather just live a lifestyle I want and say, I'm going to go on a hike in the middle of the day. And I was just talking with my daughter about this on our walk right before this. And I said, honey, do you know why we're buying houses? She's like, yeah, to make more money. And I said, do you know why we're trying to build more money? She's like, yes, so we can help others. I'm like, yes. So we've been really trying to reiterate that my goal is to be able to buy properties where those properties cash flow charities. So it's like, I want to have a life I enjoy while building businesses that help others.
Yeah.
Might have one or two nice things. I mean, my husband loves old cars, so we'll probably have more of those.
It's good to, everyone has their, what makes them tick and what pushes them to do what they want to do. And I love that answer. And especially the idea of having, and I've actually thought about this as well, having, businesses or properties that essentially the cash flow just goes straight to charity instead of, your income. Because like you said, you can only have so much, like you can only use so much money. And especially if you're comfortable with your lifestyle and you're not trying to keep, upping your lifestyle and you don't really care what the neighbors think or anything like that, all that money can do so much good. So
yes, don't fall into we call it the keeping up with the Joneses. We know some very nice people who are actively trying and they don't own anything because they're trying to do the next trendy thing or whatnot. And I'm like, are you going to be stuck in this job for the next 20 years? So that's when Megan Winterberg and Chris come along and are very candid to them and just say, is this the life you want? Are you really happy? They don't all like to listen to us, but I know it. They want to hear it. They need to hear it.
Usually the things that we need to hear, we don't want to hear.
Oh, ain't that the truth?
And that's really the challenge of life is getting yourself to be able to hear the things that you really need to hear.
Yes.
Well, awesome. Megan, finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
So the best way would be social media and Instagram. So that's where I'm the most active and I've kept it simple. So my handle is just at Megan Winterberg. Megan is Megan, no extra H's or A's, no Megan over here. And Winterberg, Berg. You can talk to me about loans. You can see my full cabin portfolio, some other things I've got going on.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put all that in the show notes so people can easily find you. And I hope they do because you are a wealth of knowledge and inspiration to a lot of us. So thank you for joining me on the show. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for your company because your cost segregations have helped me buy more cabins. So
there you go.
Thankful to you also.
Happy to do so. It's always good to hear people not just using these tax benefits to benefit themselves, but also using that money to reinvest. And that's what really what I love to see, people helping to reach their goals much faster through that. So awesome. And to our listeners, guys, thank you guys for listening all the way to the end. Once again, remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.